7.2 GCSE AQA specification, we are looking at cancer. Now, cancer is a group name for a variety of diseases that are caused by damage to genes that control mitosis. Remember, mitosis is your cell division, and the default setting, the normal setting for cell division is go, go, go. If you imagine a car, you've got your foot on the accelerator and you are flying. However, we do have some genes that act as stop sequences. And those stop sequences are like putting the brake on in the car and slowing the whole process of mitosis, of cell division, down to a normal rate. So when you have a cancer, which can come in various forms that are all destructive, basically you have lost that stop mechanism. You're not able to press the brake, and so your cells are going under uncontrolled growth. Now, cancers are caused by tumours, and the good news is that tumours aren't all cancerous. They come in two types. You have benign tumours and you have malignant tumours, and it is that makes the difference as to whether you've got cancer or not. Let's just remind ourselves of the cell cycle. So remember, mostly the cell cycle is during what we call interphase. That is the time that the cell is doubling up its chromosomes, it's doubling up its subcellular structures like mitochondria and ribosomes, and then the chromosomes separate, and then we get cytokinesis, which is the actual nucleus separating and the cell membrane pinching in the middle and actually creating those two new daughter cells. And if we look at how these two diagrams look, this might look like a normal tissue. In this tissue here, we've got some abnormal growth going on. These cells have grown out of control. And this out of control growth rapidly results in a mass of abnormal cells. And when you go to the doctors and they take a biopsy, this is the kind of thing that they might look for. Now, the difference with benign tumours and malignant tumours is that benign tumours just grow in one place. In fact, they grow really, really slowly. And normally, your cells have almost like a little glue that sticks them together. And in benign tumours, this glue does very much keep those cells just in one place. Additional to that, they also have like a little capsule or a membrane around them that keeps them in one place. So benign tumours are less harmful than malignant ones. However, where they will cause you discomfort or distress is if they are squashing on another organ. So for example, if you had a benign tumour in your brain, obviously it's going to be growing and squashing your brain tissue, so that's not going to be comfortable, and that would be a problem. Benign tumours, because they come in this little membrane, are often easy to be removed surgically. So if somebody found a lump and they went and had it investigated, then what they can do is they'll cut it out, or they'll take a piece of it, examine it under the microscope, and if they see it's benign, i.e. its nucleus looks normal because it's not undergoing uncontrolled growth, it looks quite compact and there's this capsule around it, then the doctors, the scientists will pretty much know that it's not a malignant tumour, and they can rest assured that that tumour has remained in one place and not spread around your body. And so if we talk about malignant tumours, how are they different? Well, they're all the opposite of benign. So they grow very quickly. Because they're growing very quickly, the nucleus looks very different. They also don't have the sticky glue, the adhesive substance around the cell, and that allows bits to break off, to enter the blood or the lymph, and to move to different parts of the body where they will sit, and then they will continue to grow. So that's how we end up with secondary cancers. So that process of them moving from one place to somewhere else is called metastasis. Okay, so a tumour may have metastasized if it's moved from one area to another. And that is a word that you need to know. So some of the words we've used: malignant, a harmful tumour; benign, a less harmful tumour, one that stays in one place and doesn't spread; and metastasize, the name used to describe the movement of a piece or a cell of malignant tumour from one part of the body to the other. Malignant tumours can also cause whole body effects. They can cause you to become extremely fatigued, and because they're growing so quickly, they can cause you to lose a lot of weight. When people have a malignant form of a tumour, they have rapid weight loss, and in fact that can be one of the first signs that people realise there's something wrong. And so here we have a diagram of a malignant tumour. You can see that the cells are breaking away from the main mass. You can see that the membrane around it is lacking or limited. And you can see that these cells are going to break out and go and form cancers in other cells. And this is sadly why, when we find that somebody has had cancer, that it can reoccur. And that's because perhaps someone has started with breast cancer, they've had that treated, they found it, they maybe had surgery, they had radiotherapy or chemotherapy, and then later on, maybe even a couple of years later, they find it's come back. And it's because those small pieces of cell have metastasized, they've moved to a different part of the body, and then they're causing trouble sometime later. And again, from a benign tumour, which is not cancerous and won't spread. Its only problem is that perhaps later on, it might turn into a malignant tumour, which is why you might want to get it surgically removed, or that it's going to be pushing on other blood vessels or other tissues. So what are the risk factors for cancer? Why do some people seem to get it and others don't? Well, scientists are at great debate about this, and there's a large component that is down to your genes, and increasingly that is what the scientists are thinking. However, there are known carcinogens, there's another word you need to know, known carcinogens, things that can cause cancer, that will increase your chances whether you're predisposed to cancer genetically or not. So as we said, most cancers are caused by a genetic mutation. So what causes a genetic mutation in your cells? Well, we know that the tar in cigarette smoke can cause your cells in your lungs to mutate and therefore form a malignant cancer. We also know that materials like asbestos was a wonder material back in the day. It's fire retardant, in other words, it doesn't catch fire. When it was invented, people said, this is amazing, let's build everything out of asbestos. What they didn't realise was when you're working with asbestos, it releases tiny, fine threads into the air that are able to be breathed in. They become lodged, and 20 years later, you get cancer of the lungs. So now asbestos is banned, and to remove it from buildings, people have to wear specialist clothes, specialist equipment, and if you're trying to buy a house, one of the questions that the bank will ask you when you're trying to borrow money from them is, does it contain asbestos? We also know that ionizing radiation will cause genes to mutate. So where do we get ionizing radiation from? Well, UV light from sun rays, or when you go for an x-ray, if you've ever had a chest x-ray, one of the things that they'll do is they'll put a lead apron around your reproductive organ. They don't want to damage your reproductive organs, and they are actively growing by mitosis, so they'll put the lead apron because the x-ray can't penetrate through the lead. So how do we treat cancer? Well, one of the big deals is identifying that you have cancer early, and that's why you need to check yourself. Now, they recommend checking, if you're a boy, checking your testes once a month when you're in the shower, and the same for a female, checking your breasts in the shower every month, because if you check it on a daily basis, the change might be so gradual you might not notice. However, if you check once a month, you will very much know if there is a difference. And you have to press quite hard. I remember going to the doctor's many years ago, and she had like a fake boob, and in there was a little lump, and she said, just press on that and see how hard you have to press to feel the lump. And she said, that's how hard you have to press when you test yourself. If you find something, you should go to the doctors, because it might be completely benign and you might be worrying over nothing. However, if it's malignant and you catch it early, there's a lot of treatment you can have, and the prognosis, in other words, the future, is much brighter if you catch cancer earlier. So what kind of things can they do for you? Well, one thing is radiotherapy, where doses of radiation are passed through the point, and what they normally do is put weaker waves of radiation through at various angles so they don't damage each of the cells, but where they cross, the strength of the radiation is so much stronger and it will damage the cancer cells. The other thing that they can do is give you chemotherapy, which is basically chemicals into your blood. You'll go along to the hospital and you'll sit, and the chemicals might be in a drip and they just feed it into your system. And yes, it's horrible. Yes, you feel polluted and none of the treatment is nice. However, it's much better than leaving it untreated and the prognosis not being as optimistic. So whenever we talk about cancer, it often seems doom and gloom, but there is a lot of research and development going on. And the key thing is, we don't know that one thing necessarily causes another. We don't know that there's direct correlations, but we know that there are associations between a lot of things that you do with your lifestyle and the risk of getting cancer. So why not reduce those chances? So obesity has been linked with cancer. Smoking, alcohol, and of course exposure to UV light, sunbathing, probably the worst thing that you can do. So just to recap on those keywords, you need to know the word benign, you need to know the word malignant and what they mean in terms of cancer. Tumour, yes, what causes cancer, the uncontrolled growth and cell division. And you need to know about the word metastasize, which basically describes when a piece of a malignant tumour breaks off and transfers to another part of your body. One more thing to note is that about 15% of cancers are caused by viruses. And the common one, the hot topic, is Hpv, Human Papillomavirus. Now, it's a sexually transmitted disease, and once you've been in contact with the virus, there's no point in having the vaccine. But there is a vaccine available, and the vaccine has been found to be really, really effective. Most cases of cervical cancer, obviously the cervix is the uterus, most cases of cervical cancer is caused by Hpv. So if you have the vaccine way before you're going to be sexually active, then you are protected against that. Now, the Hpv virus, there's no signs, there's no symptoms, very few signs and symptoms in the early stages of cervical cancer. But it is a large killer of women, especially young women. So why not get the vaccine? And I had this chat with my class. Whose responsibility is it to make sure you get that vaccine? Normally they give it in schools in the UK, but in other areas, in other parts of the world, they have different vaccination schedules. Now in Australia, they've nearly wiped out HPV because they've also started immunising boys. HPV is a virus that does have an effect on boys. It's not just that boys can pass it to girls. They have found links with throat cancer, penile cancer, and cancer of the anus. So all of these things can be avoided. So do research the HPV vaccine and see what you find out.